Hello and welcome to Writer to Writer. My guest today is bestselling author Cam Torrens. I know some of you have heard of him and read his books because he was nominated for an interview, and here he is. Like most authors, Cam writes what he knows. His suspense thriller novels feature Air Force veteran and search and rescue volunteer Tyler Zahn. In real life, Cam had a 30-plus year in the Air Force delivering combat supplies and personnel across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. He's the father of 6, lives with his spouse in Buena Vista, Colorado, and he volunteers for the Chaffee County Search and Rescue team. Hi, Cam. It's so good to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Kat. Thanks for having me on Writer to Writer. I appreciate it.
So good to have you. Your first book, Sable, is a story about a kidnapper hiding in plain sight and a rural town with just a plethora of suspects. And as the story unfolds, a 911 call sends search and rescue to look for a missing girl, but the one they find isn't the one they're looking for. Without spoilers, can you give readers some more about that?
You bet. When we moved out here to the middle of Colorado to Buena Vista, I immediately was looking for, how I was going to fit in and what I was going to do out here. And I joined Chaffee County Search and Rescue. I've been quite involved in a lot of missions, and my brain works in mysterious ways. We would go out on missions and I would think, well, what if it turned out a little bit different? And so Stable was actually based off of a real mission. Of course, not one that involved any kidnapping, but we did have a 7-year-old girl that went missing in the mountains, the foothills, just like what you see behind me, about 3 miles further north than the view that you have behind me. And fortunately, we were able to find her and reunite her with her family. But that got me thinking, what would have happened if we would have found a girl, but it wasn't the one we were looking for? And the story kind of took off from there. All fiction after that.
And in the story, your main character's daughter is involved. Have you ever had your daughter involved in that way, or any of your kids?
No, that's all fiction. But I will tell you that that both my daughters have been involved, looking at my writing and helping me write in the voice of a young adult. One of my characters' points of view in the book is a young girl, and I'm not sure I will ever try that point of view again. So I had to consult my middle school boys, my 2 youngest boys, for some Harry Potter and Percy Jackson tips with that character. But yeah, my kids have really they haven't been like actively reading my books, but they're constantly giving me ideas.
So they're your little critiquers.
Critiquer muses.
Critiquers, there you go. And you deal with some hot topics on this, child trafficking and kidnapping, but you handle that with a great deal of sensitivity. So what's your origin story, Cam? How did it lead you to where you are now?
Well, you mentioned the 30 years in the Air Force. So I was a pilot for about 2/3 of that, the first 21 years of that 30-year career. And after that, I had a job working at the U.S. Embassy as a military diplomat and attaché over in Beijing, China. As a matter of fact, that's where we adopted our 2 youngest boys while we were there. And following that assignment, I was a Professor of Aerospace Studies, which is a fancy name for ROTC commander out at Virginia Tech. And that was the last 4 years of my Air Force. And, I've always been a reader. Ever since I can remember, I've been reading somewhere close to or over 100 books a year. It's just my absolute favorite thing to do. And whenever I hit a great book, it's like I feel like it's a gift from the author to me. And so after I retired and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do besides the search and rescue to occupy my time, I said, well, I'm going to see if I can try my hand at this writing thing and give that gift back. And I figured, if all that reading I've done, how hard could it be? And I got my eyes wide open. Took a little while to find my groove, and I'm still working on that. So
I think everybody is. Well, in book 2, Fall Summit, members of the Search and Rescue Squad are very good at finding lost people. but this time it's one of their own. Can you give readers who haven't gotten to that one yet a little bit of that story?
Sure. Two things I want to point out on that is one, my two youngest boys actually came up with the idea because we were driving on a road trip and I was asking about ideas and they're like, well, you wrote a story about finding a lost person, but what would happen if the person that was missing was actually a search and rescue person? Has that ever happened before? And I thought to myself, well, it certainly hasn't happened on our team, but we could probably run with that. And then the other way that Fall Summit came about is because I've got two major genres that I really like to read. So I love an outdoor adventure thriller like C.J. Box with his Joe Pickett series, game warden up in Wyoming, or Craig Johnson, with the Longmire series. I love those guys. I love those adventures. But I'm also Megan Miranda, Lisa Jewell, Mary Kubica, psychological thriller fan as well. And so, I broke the rules on the series because Stable is kind of written in the CJ Box, Craig Johnson style, but Fall Summit is as much of a psychological thriller as it is an adventure thriller. And I was really inspired by Mary Kubica on that one. And so it's a dual timeline, and it's told in alternating chapters between Tyler Zahn and the search and rescue member who goes missing. So I'll leave it at that. No spoilers, but they're definitely two different books with characters that readers are familiar with if they've read Stable.
I think people like that these days. I've been talking to several writers about the fact that cross-genre is a new thing. And I don't think it actually is a new thing. I think that publishers are just recognizing that. So the publisher wants to know, what shelf are we going to put this book on so people can find it? But really, I think that a better way to look for a book that you like to read is to find something that is like the author. So I think that's a good point that you made. And you must be doing something right, because your first two books, Stable and Fall Summit, were released, 2023, and both held Amazon rankings at #1 spots for quite a while. So that's no small thing. So yeah, you're doing something right.
Thank you. I appreciate your definition of quite a while. Also, I wasn't sure whether they held the #1 spot in the category 37 seconds or 37 minutes, but it was fun to see the books climb up there. So.
Yeah, I think that if you look, though, it's like today it's here and today it's there and today it's back here, but it ends up being over time. It's pretty much a good average. So yeah, you did very well. So you already said what kind of books you like to read, but are there other books that have influenced what you write?
Well, those were the big authors that have influenced me, but my experience with Black Rose Writing, you and I both write for Black Rose Writing, has really opened my eyes to other genres. I've always read military fiction, biographies, memoirs, but I tell you, I haven't read much in the way of fantasy or historical fantasy. As a matter of the first I'd read in that genre, and I've read several since then, and that was a real unexpected benefit of working with Black Rose Writing, was the opportunity to broaden my horizons. And I also think that it's probably influenced in my writing because I'm seeing different styles in these different genres. So,
that's a good point. And it's something that I haven't talked with any of the other Black Rose writers about. And not all of my guests are from Black Rose, but since you are, and Ross is, and several people that I've recently interviewed, I think that one of the things Black Rose has going for it is that they kind of put everybody together. And so it creates a community that you don't normally have with a publisher. I like that. And I like the fact that we're all, not only are we helping each other out, but we're also helping each other out in terms of getting the word out too. So yeah, there are a lot of books that I have read recently that I wouldn't normally have read. And it's because they were Black Rose authors and we're all family. So that's kind of cool. I like that. So Cam,
I think so. People talk to me about, I'm sorry. People talk to me about, advice that I give to writers. I spent the first year doing everything by myself before I had a local author, Laurel McCarg, talk me into joining our county writing group. And that was a game changer. All of a sudden,
Oh,
I was involved in a critique group. Then I feel like the Black Rose writing kind of took me to the next level. So now one of the very first things I tell somebody who's starting to write is find yourself a group of like-minded authors. You know, you're all trying to do anything, and that not only that support, but that honest feedback about how they feel about your work will make a huge difference.
Yeah. And I think too, the idea that you're working with people who are publishing, and so they know how to sandwich advice. So everybody has something to learn on their manuscript. And so then when a group of authors sit down with you and they all write and they all understand what it's like to take critique, then they sandwich it. They say what they liked, and then they say what could be better, and then they say what they like. And that makes it, easier, but it also makes it easier to sort of maintain that the passion for writing. So it's not like, well, that stunk, you ought to change this, And there's another thing about this group, and I didn't mean to turn this into a Black Rose thing, but the other thing that I've noticed about this is nobody tries to take over your story, which can happen in a critique group. People forget that it's not their story, that you're not asking them to write it, you're asking for help. And this group seems to be really good about that. So yeah, I think so.
That's been my experience too.
Yeah. So on a more personal level, you are a part-time ultra runner, and I would love for you to tell writers about that.
Oh, I've always been a jogger, and distance is kind of what I like. So over the past, as I got into my 50s, I found the pavement on marathons was just a little too hard on the feet, and so I switched to trails. And so I've done 7 or 8 ultra runs since I got into my 50s, and I have one, excuse me, the weekend after next out in Moab, Utah, 55 kilometers that I've been training for.
Wow.
And also got a streak run going on. So today was day 849 of running at least a mile a day. So it's kind of a serious hobby, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I bet that comes in handy with the search and rescue.
It does. It's good to have the lungs in shape because my house in the picture behind me is my neighborhood there. That's at about 9,000 feet. And Mount Princeton, there's just over 14,000 feet. And that's where we do a lot of our rescues are off the mountains. So
yeah,
it's good to have strong lungs.
For people who live in my neighborhood, Flatlanders, 9,000 feet is really high. Okay. We're at sea level here. So Rick and I are about to move back to Arizona, and we'll be at 6,000 feet, but 9 is very high. So your website.
I saw the pictures of your property on Facebook.
Oh,
beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, we'll talk about that another time. But oh, gee, we bought ourselves a piece of property, and it's darn near perpendicular to the street. We didn't realize that. It's a whole nother thing. So at your website, camtorrens.com, you are a writer, reader, runner, and ruminator. Are those things you do in priority order? Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. I think if I was to do it by the thing I spend the most time doing, or the thing I absolutely love the most, I would have put reader first. But I had to spend my first 3 years of writing convincing myself that I was a writer. And so I would write morning affirmations. I do morning pages and little journaling, and I would write, I am a writer. Writing is what I do. I will write. And so when I put together the website, I had to put writing first, even though I probably spend more minutes on the reading aspect of it. And the running part I already talked about. And the ruminating, I'm a scheduler, so I probably spend the least amount of time thinking about things, but I do a blog like you do on your website that I sometimes put down what's running through my mind. So
yeah, my problem is I need to stop ruminating when it's time to go to sleep. That keeps me up. So readers would like to know why you write.
Why I write? Well, I talked about, wanting to give the gift that I enjoyed so much from all these adventure thriller writers, psychological fiction, give that gift back, try to put together a story that people want to read. That's my number one goal on the writing, is to get it in the most number of people's hands and have them enjoy it. That's why I write. And it's also cathartic. I mean, I try to write every day. That's part of my process. And it's just become an important part of my life. As a matter of fact, it's ended up taking enough time that my wife approached me after the first year and said, "Are you going to keep doing this? What's the schedule here?" And I think I appeased her. I told her, "Well, how about a book a year for 10 years?" And she goes, "And then what?" And then I said, "Well, then we'll look at something else, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether I'll stop or not." So it's been fun.
I don't know what it'll work out for you to be, but I can tell you, I used to do publicity for authors, and my longest running client, 35 years. And
wow.
Up until the day he passed away, he was still writing books. And I think he had something like 65 books. So yeah, wow. It's kind of becomes a thing. I hate to tell your wife. Don't tell her I said that.
We'll keep. I don't think she's surfing the net for any podcasts with me on them, so okay. I might be safe.
Mum's the word on that. So publishing, how easy was that? Getting published?
Not easy. So yeah. The reason it looks like I've got 4 books that are just being cranked out is because I'm actually rewriting original books that I wrote and making them better based off of what I've learned, and then trying to get them forward. So when I started up with Black Rose Writing, I actually pitched False Summit, which is my second book that's out now, but it was actually the 3rd book in the series. It's just that I was still figuring out how to write, and so I've taken what I've learned, I've gone back, and I'm actually on about a book a year pace. It just so happens that there'll be, 2 came out in 2023 and then almost 2 in 2024. So.
Okay. And you have another one coming out, Scorched. That'll be out in August.
Right. Scorched. That's out in August. That's an art heist in the mountains with a little bit of a locked room plot twist to it, little homage to Agatha Christie and Lucy Foley on that one. So it should be fun. I think folks will really enjoy it. I think it's my best book so far.
And then you're also under contract for one in 2025, Death Spiral.
That's a prequel to the series. And so excited about that. Folks will see how Tyler Zahn got started out here in Colorado. And I'm I can tell you exactly, because this morning I finished 13,000 words on book 5. So wow. I usually write about 1,000 words a day, and this morning was 13,000. So
yeah. I think that's great, because when a reader finds an author, one of the things that this is what I'm told, but I know what I do too. The first thing I do is look to see how many books they have, because if they have a nice body of work or they have more things coming out, then oh, I really like that. What's next? And so you don't have to go looking around again. The search for somebody that's good and that you really like is a big deal. And so when you do find somebody, you want to stick with them. So Amazon is not very good about the suggestions that they give you at the bottom either. Sometimes they're completely some book that author that I knew that was writing fantasy, all these anime things were running below, and they were not a good matchup at all. So I don't know what to think about that. So,
no, I agree.
So
when you say a good author, it is hard to find. When you find them, you want to be able to read everything they got. I'm that way too.
Yeah. So I understand that you're taking writing lessons through a veterans organization.
I am. I started doing this last spring. I met David L. Robbins. He's a New York Times bestselling author of historical fiction. He was a guest speaker at the Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers Conference in Denver in the fall of 2022. And I got to talking to him, and he mentioned this course that he gives for free to veterans, and to talk, write memoir stories about their service. And so I joined that, and he's amazing. I've learned a lot. I've read several of his books. He's another one I'll probably end up reading all of stuff, even though historical fiction's not my go-to genre, that he's just such an excellent writer. So I'm in his second class now, his master's class. We meet every Wednesday, and I've just been having a ton of fun learning with him and getting a chance to read these stories from other veterans with the experiences they've had.
That's
And
great.
so, since you asked about it, if you go on YouTube and type in the Mighty Pen Project or Virginia War Memorial podcast, you'll see they've got these stories coming out on podcasts with voice actors now, and there's just some great short stories in there.
That's great. I will put the links down for that. And yours are in Audible, correct? Your books?
Correct. Yes, Fall Summit and Stable are both available on Audible. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Do you have an opinion about that? Whether do you prefer to read or listen to them, or do you not have a preference?
So I love other people's audiobooks because I spend so much time on the treadmill and jogging that I probably get 3 or 4 audiobooks a month done. And so I absolutely love them. I'm hooked on them. I haven't made it past chapter 10 on either one of my own books. Not because they're bad. The voice actor, Tim Morgan, is fantastic. And we've built up a relationship talking back and forth on Instagram. He's great. But it's just so strange to hear my writing out loud that I'm not sure whether I'll make it all the way through one of my own books or not. I hope Tim's not listening to this, but
well, the other thing too, I think
other folks have told me that they enjoy the audio.
Yeah, I'm listening to the second one right now, and I like listening to books because, well, especially if they get a really good narrator. But I like listening to it because it's almost like a play. Well, some of them are produced that way, but it's kind of cool that way. But also, there's no excuse if I'm vacuuming or if I'm driving, if I'm sitting in the doctor's office. There's no reason that you can't be listening, and it gives me something to do. And I don't know how you are, but I am trying to cut down on my screen time. So if I'm wearing headphones, I'm still doing something productive. But when you're holding your tablet in front of you, I know. Yeah. So yeah. And my husband enjoys the books that I do. And since we do travel so much, we often listen to a book in the car. So that's really nice. Yeah.
Right. Road trips are great for that. We're about 3-hour drive from Denver, which is the closest big city, or Colorado Springs. And so if we're ever on a drive solo, both my wife and I enjoy putting on a good audiobook.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's a good way to share too. And I have a different list of, there's the books I listen to, there's the books he listens to, and then there's the books we listen to. So that's always a good, right. We have the same situation with music. So I think a lot of people are like that. Is there a question, Cam, that I have not asked that you wish that I had?
I wanted to be asked, what are some early reads you've read that readers could look forward to reading pretty soon?
Okay.
So, we talked about Black Rose writing, and I just wanted to mention a couple authors. I've read 2 books. Lucille Guarino has a book coming out.
Oh yeah.
Late March called Elizabeth's Mountain. Have you had a chance to read that?
I did read that. It was really good. Yeah.
I thought so too. And she'll have another one coming out later in the year called Sue Ellen. So look for that name. Gail Dwyer has a book coming out the day after tomorrow called A Roof Above. A Roof Above. And it's about a military romance, but I tell you what, even if you don't know anything about the military, it's written such that anybody would love it. A great book about relationships. David Sean Klein has a book coming out called The Dead Shall Live. That comes out a week from Thursday. And I thought that was fantastic. He's a really good writer. And Travis Toga just had one come out in January called Foxholes. It's the first in a 3-book series.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's excellent too. It's also a military related thriller, I would say. So those are great ones. You know, I already mentioned Shadowrunner, how much I enjoyed that, and I'm looking forward. I know you're working on Shadowhunter, so I will be standing in line, getting a chance to read that. Pick me for an early read.
Will do. My husband is poking me with a stick. It's done technically, but you know how that goes, you know. So anyway, yeah.
Right, I do.
Yeah. Well, Cam, it has been an honor and a pleasure. I want to let readers know, I'm sorry, listeners know that if you see that Cam is coming and going a little bit on his actual visual, we are in different time zones. And that happens. I just interviewed someone in England, and that was fun because there's a little delay when you're talking. So that's what was going on there. But it has been an honor and a pleasure. Readers, as always, I will post all the links below so you can find Cam, his books, and stay abreast of his passion projects. And please, when you do read any author's book, please don't forget to leave a review. It's the book version of like and subscribe. Also, remember, books make the best gifts. Okay, you may not know somebody's size or their favorite color, but I bet you know what they read. So, Cam, as always, it's a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thanks, Kat. I really appreciate you having me on your show, and to all the readers, thanks for listening. Thanks.
Thanks.